They sat me, by the trash. Not near it. Not close to it. But literally, right next to the dumpster behind the reception hall. I'm sitting there, in my best dress, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy, watching through a dirty window as my own family celebrates inside. The bride, she saw me. She actually saw me sitting there, alone, with the smell of rotting food and God knows what else. And you know what she did? She stopped the music. Just stopped it. Right in the middle of her first dance. I watched her walk outside, in her $1,000 wedding dress, past all the guests staring, past her new husband calling her name. She walked straight to me, sitting by that dumpster, and she sat down. Right there on the concrete. In her wedding dress. The silence was deafening. Inside, 200 guests were whispering, pointing, trying to figure out why the bride just abandoned her own reception. Outside, it was just us. Me and this woman I'd never met before today. Both of us sitting by a trash can like we belonged there. But here's the thing. I knew exactly why my family put me there. And after tonight, after what I'm about to tell you, they're going to wish they'd never been born. Because what happened next, what I did in response to sitting by that trash, it destroyed them. Completely. Their reputations, gone. Their bank accounts, emptied. Their perfect little world, burned to the ground. And it all started with that bride sitting down next to me. Because she's the one who asked the question that changed everything. She looked at me, mascara starting to run from the heat, and said, "Honey, why are you sitting here? This is my wedding, and I don't even know who you are." That's when I realized, they didn't just put me by the trash. They didn't even tell the bride that I was family. They were so ashamed of me, that they pretended I didn't exist. But by the end of tonight, I made sure everyone knew exactly who I was. And exactly what this family really was. Let me tell you about my family, and why they thought putting me by the trash was appropriate. My name is Sarah. I'm 26 years old, and I'm the black sheep. Not because I'm a criminal, or a drug addict, or anything dramatic like that. No, my crime was much worse, apparently. I'm poor. See, my family, they're what you'd call new money. My Uncle Richard, the father of the bride, made his fortune in real estate about 15 years ago. Suddenly, everyone in my family started acting like they'd always been rich. Like they'd forgotten where they came from. But I remembered. I remembered when Uncle Richard lived in the same rundown apartment complex as us. When his wife, my Aunt Margaret, shopped at thrift stores and clipped coupons like her life depended on it. When my cousin Jessica, the bride, wore hand-me-downs to school and got free lunch. But money changes people. The first time I really understood this was 3 years ago. Christmas dinner at Uncle Richard's new house. This massive, gaudy mansion with marble floors and chandeliers in every room. I showed up in my best outfit, a dress from Target that I thought looked nice. My Aunt Margaret took one look at me and said, "Oh, Sarah. Didn't anyone tell you this was a formal dinner?" Everyone was wearing designer clothes. Everything looked expensive. And there I was, in my $20 dress, feeling like an imposter in my own family. But the worst part wasn't the clothes. It was when my cousin Jessica, sweet little Jessica who used to borrow my homework, looked at me across that dining table and said, "Sarah, what do you even do for work again?" I always forget. She knew exactly what I did. I'm a teacher at an inner-city elementary school. I make $32,000 a year, and I'm proud of it. I help kids who come from the same background I did. Kids whose families can't afford marble countertops and crystal wine glasses. But Jessica said it like my job was so insignificant that it wasn't worth remembering. That night, I overheard my mother, my own mother, talking to Aunt Margaret in the kitchen. She said, "I just don't know what to do about Sarah. She's so stubborn. She could have married well if she'd just tried harder." Married well. Like my only value was finding a rich husband. The second incident happened last year. My grandmother's funeral. The woman who raised half of us when our parents were too busy working, or drinking, or both. I was devastated. She was the only person in my family who never made me feel less than. I couldn't afford a black suit. I wore my one good black dress, the same one I'd worn to job interviews and church and every important event for the past 3 years. It was clean, it was appropriate, but it wasn't expensive. At the reception after the funeral, I'm talking to some of my grandmother's old friends, sharing memories, when Uncle Richard pulls me aside. He says, "Sarah, next time there's a family event, maybe give us a heads up if you need help with appropriate attire." Appropriate attire. At my grandmother's funeral. While I'm grieving. That was the moment I realized, they weren't just embarrassed by my clothes, or my job, or my apartment. They were embarrassed by me. By what I represented. I was a reminder of who they used to be, and they hated that. But the final straw, the thing that made me realize just how deep their contempt went, happened 6 months ago. I got engaged. Let me know in the comments where you are watching this video from. I'd love to know. His name is Marcus. He's a social worker, makes about as much as I do, and he's the kindest man I've ever met. We've been together for 3 years, and when he proposed, I was over the moon. I called my family to share the news. I was so excited, so happy, and I thought maybe this would change things. Maybe they'd be happy for me. My mother's response was, "Oh. Well. I suppose that's nice, dear." Not congratulations. Not "I'm so happy for you." Just nice. Then she asked, "What does he do again?" When I told her he was a social worker, there was this pause. This long, uncomfortable silence. And then she said, "Well, I'm sure you'll be happy." The way she said happy, like it was some consolation prize. But Uncle Richard was worse. He called me the next day and said, "Sarah, I hope you're not expecting the kind of wedding Jessica's getting. We simply can't, well, you understand." I wasn't asking for anything. I hadn't even mentioned a wedding. I just told them I was engaged, and his first thought was, making sure I knew they wouldn't help pay for it. That's when I understood. I wasn't just the poor relative. I was the cautionary tale. The example they'd use to teach their kids what happens when you don't marry up. So when Jessica's wedding invitation arrived, addressed to Sarah Johnson and guest, not Sarah Johnson and Marcus, I should have known what to expect. I should have known that showing up would be a mistake. But I went anyway. Because despite everything, they're still my family. And I thought, maybe at someone's wedding, they'd at least pretend to care about me. Instead, they put me by the trash. The day of Jessica's wedding. I spent 2 hours getting ready. I did my own hair, my own makeup, and I put on that same dress I'd worn to my grandmother's funeral. Not because I wanted to, but because it was the only formal dress I owned. Marcus looked handsome in his one good suit, the navy blue one he'd bought for job interviews. We drove an hour to get to the venue. Some fancy country club that probably cost more for one day than I make in 6 months. The parking lot was full of BMWs and Mercedes, and our 10-year-old Honda looked like it belonged in a different zip code. But we walked in with our heads held high. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll give them that. Jessica looked stunning, her husband seemed nice enough, and, for a moment, I thought maybe this would be okay. Maybe they'd seat us somewhere decent, and we could just blend in. That's when the wedding planner approached us. "Are you Sarah?" she asked, looking down at her clipboard. "Yes, that's me." She smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the kind of smile you give someone when you're about to deliver bad news. "Right this way, please." She led us through the main reception hall, past all the beautifully decorated tables with white linens and centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Past my family members who were already seated, chatting and laughing and not even looking in our direction. We kept walking. And walking. Until we were outside. "Here we are," she said, pointing to a small folding table, set for two, positioned directly next to the dumpster behind the building. Marcus looked at me. I looked at the table. Then I looked at the industrial-sized trash bin, sitting maybe 3 feet away. "I'm sorry," I said. "There must be some mistake." The wedding planner checked her clipboard again. "Sarah Johnson, +1, table 12. This is table 12. Table 12. They'd actually numbered it. Like it was a real table, and not just a punishment. "But this is..." Marcus started to say. "Outside," I finished. "This is outside. By the garbage." The wedding planner's smile got tighter. "I'm just following the seating chart, ma'am. If you have any concerns, you'll need to speak with the family." And she walked away. Marcus and I stood there for a moment, just staring at this folding table. It had the same white tablecloth as the others, the same plastic chairs, but it was outside. Next to a dumpster. Where you could smell rotting food and hear the kitchen staff throwing away trash. "We should leave," Marcus whispered. "No," I said. "We're not leaving. Because here's the thing. I knew exactly what they were doing. They invited me, so they could say they included me. But they seated me outside, so I'd know my place. They wanted me to feel ashamed, to quietly disappear, to never come to another family event again. But I was done being ashamed. So we sat down. We sat at that table, next to that dumpster, and we pretended it was normal. Marcus held my hand across the table, and we talked about our own wedding plans, our future, our dreams. We ignored the curious looks from the catering staff who kept walking by, wondering why 2 people in formal wear were eating dinner next to the trash. About an hour into the reception, I could see people inside, dancing, laughing, celebrating. The music was loud enough that we could hear it through the windows, but we couldn't really be part of it. We were observers. Outsiders watching our own family celebration from behind glass. That's when Uncle Richard came outside. He walked over to our table, straightening his tie, and cleared his throat. "Sarah," he said. "How are you, enjoying the reception?" The audacity. The sheer audacity of this man, asking me how I was enjoying sitting next to a dumpster. "It's lovely, Uncle Richard," I said. "The view is particularly nice." He glanced at the dumpster, and for a second, just a second, I saw something that might have been shame cross his face. But it disappeared quickly. "Well, I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable." "Very comfortable," Marcus said. His voice was steady, but I could hear the anger underneath. Nothing says family celebration like dining al fresco with the garbage. Uncle Richard's face went red. Now see here. No, I said, standing up. You see here. You invited us to this wedding. You gave us a table number. You made us drive an hour to be here. And then you put us outside. Next to the trash. Like we're garbage ourselves. Sarah, you're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm sitting next to a dumpster at my cousin's wedding, and I'm making a scene? That's when other people started noticing. The kitchen staff stopped what they were doing. A few guests near the windows were turning to look. And Uncle Richard started to panic. Keep your voice down, he hissed. Why? I asked. Are you embarrassed? Are you worried about what people might think if they knew you seated your own niece next to the garbage at your daughter's wedding? Before he could answer, the bride herself, Jessica, appeared in the doorway. She was still in her wedding dress, and she looked confused. She walked over, and that's when she asked the question that changed everything. Honey, why are you sitting here? This is my wedding, and I don't even know who you are. Uncle Richard went pale. Because Jessica, sweet, innocent Jessica, had just revealed the truth. They hadn't just hidden me outside. They hadn't told the bride that I was even family. Before I tell you what I did next, if you're enjoying the story, please subscribe. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. The silence was deafening. Jessica stood there, in her beautiful white dress, looking between me and her father, waiting for an explanation. Uncle Richard's face had gone from red to completely white. Like all the blood had just drained out of it. I'm Sarah, I said softly. I'm your cousin. Jessica blinked. Once. Twice. Then she turned to look at her father, with this expression of complete confusion. Dad? She's, what? Jessica, sweetheart, Uncle Richard said, his voice shaking. Let's discuss this later. No, Jessica said. Her voice was getting louder. No, Dad. She says she's my cousin. Is she family? I stood up slowly. Marcus stood with me. And I looked directly at Uncle Richard, this man who had humiliated me for years, and I smiled. Tell her, I said. Tell her what, he whispered. Tell her who I am. Tell her why you put me outside. Tell her why you didn't include me on the guest list you gave her. Jessica was looking back and forth between us, like she was watching a tennis match. But I could see it in her eyes. The realization. The slow understanding that something was very, very wrong here. Dad, she said again. Who is she? Uncle Richard opened his mouth, but no words came out. So I spoke for him. I'm your cousin Sarah, I said to Jessica. Your father's niece. I'm the daughter of his sister, your Aunt Linda. I grew up with you. We played together as children. I taught you how to ride a bike when you were 7. Jessica's eyes went wide. Sarah? Little Sarah with the braids who used to come to Christmas? That's me. She turned to her father, and her voice was deadly quiet. Dad. Why is my cousin sitting outside? By the garbage? Uncle Richard tried to laugh. It came out as a strangled sound. It's just, there wasn't enough room inside, and... Bullshit. The word exploded out of Jessica, and I mean exploded. loud enough that everyone inside the reception hall stopped talking. Through the windows, I could see faces turning toward us. There are empty seats inside, Dad. I saw them. Table 7 has 2 empty seats, table 9 has. Dad, why didn't you tell me Sarah was coming? Why isn't she on my guest list? Uncle Richard was sweating now. Actual beads of sweat on his forehead. Jessica, please, let's not ruin your special day. My special day? Jessica laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes right before someone loses their mind. My special day where you hid my cousin outside like she's something to be ashamed of? She turned to me, and I saw tears starting to form in her eyes. Sarah, I am so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know you were here. I know you didn't, I said gently. How long have you been sitting out here? About 2 hours. 2 hours. She said it like she couldn't believe it. You've been sitting outside for 2 hours, and no one told me. That's when my mother appeared. My own mother came rushing outside, probably because she'd heard Jessica shouting. She took one look at the scene, me standing next to the dumpster table, Jessica in her wedding dress with tears in her eyes, Uncle Richard sweating like a man facing execution, and she knew. She knew it was over. Sarah, honey, my mother said, trying to sound calm. What's going on out here? What's going on, Jessica said, and her voice was like ice, is that my family lied to me. They put my cousin outside. They didn't tell me she was coming. They treated her like garbage. Literally. My mother looked at Uncle Richard. Uncle Richard looked at the ground. And I pulled out my phone. You know what, Jessica? I said. Since we're all being honest now, there's something you should know. Something about your father, and your mother, and the money that paid for this beautiful wedding. Uncle Richard's head snapped up. Sarah, don't. Don't what? I asked. Don't tell the truth? I opened the photos on my phone, the ones I'd been saving for years. The documents I'd acquired through my work connections. Because here's what my family didn't know. Teachers have access to a lot of information. Public records. Tax documents. Court filings. And I'd been researching. Jessica, I said, holding up my phone. Did you know that your father claimed bankruptcy in 2019? Right after he bought that mansion? Uncle Richard lunged forward. Give me that phone. But Marcus stepped between us. And Marcus, quiet, gentle Marcus who works with troubled kids all day, suddenly looked very, very dangerous. Don't, Marcus said quietly. Touch her. Jessica was staring at me. What are you talking about? Your father, I continued, my voice getting stronger, claimed he had no assets. No money. No ability to pay his debts. He hid all his money in shell companies and offshore accounts. He declared bankruptcy while living in $1 million house. That's not. Jessica started. It's called bankruptcy fraud, I said. It's a federal crime. Uncle Richard was shaking now. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I scrolled through my phone. Because I also have the emails. The ones between your father and his business partners. The ones where they discuss how to hide assets from the IRS. How to avoid paying taxes on millions of dollars. Jessica looked like she was going to be sick. Dad? Is this true? And here's the best part, Jessica, I said. You know how your parents always said they couldn't help with my college loans? How they couldn't assist me when I was struggling? How there just wasn't enough money to go around? I showed her another document on my phone. Your father spent $400,000 on this wedding. More money than I'll see in 10 years. While telling his own family that he couldn't afford to help. That's when Jessica snapped. Jessica didn't just snap, she exploded. $400,000, she screamed. And I mean, screamed. So loud that every single person inside that reception hall came rushing outside. Her new husband appeared first, followed by Aunt Margaret, then the rest of my family, cousins, aunts, uncles, even my grandmother's elderly sister who I hadn't seen in years. They all came flooding out, drawn by the sound of the bride having a complete meltdown. You spent $400,000 on one day, while your family was struggling? Jessica was pointing at her father now, her face red, her voice cracking. While Sarah was working 3 jobs to pay for college? While she was eating ramen noodles for dinner? Jessica, calm down. Aunt Margaret tried to intervene. No. Jessica whirled around to face her mother. Did you know? Did you know Dad was hiding money? Did you know he was committing fraud? Aunt Margaret went silent. Which was answer enough. That's when I realized the entire wedding reception was now outside. 200 guests in their formal wear, standing behind the bride and groom, watching our family implode in real time. And I wasn't done. There's more, I said. My voice was calm now, eerily calm. Because I'd been planning this moment for months. I pulled up another document on my phone. Jessica, did you know your parents filed a lawsuit against their elderly neighbor last year? Mrs. Henderson, the 80-year-old woman who lives next to their mansion? What? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. They sued her because her tree was dropping leaves in their pool. They demanded $50,000 in damages from a woman who lives on Social Security. The crowd of wedding guests gasped. Actual, audible gasps. And here, I continued, scrolling through my evidence, are the court documents showing how your father hired a private investigator to follow Mrs. Henderson. To document every time she put her trash out early, or let her dog bark too long. He was trying to harass her into selling her house, so he could buy it and tear it down. Uncle Richard was defeated. Completely defeated. He sat down heavily in one of the plastic chairs, and put his head in his hands. But Aunt Margaret still had some fight left. You vindictive little. She started toward me. Careful, Marcus said. Still standing between me and anyone who wanted to get close. Choose your words, very carefully. How dare you, she hissed at me. How dare you ruin Jessica's wedding day with your jealousy and... Jealousy? I laughed. Jealousy of what? Your bankruptcy fraud? Your lawsuit against elderly neighbors? Your complete lack of basic human decency? You're just bitter because... Because what? I stepped closer to her. Because you put me next to the garbage? Because you've spent years making me feel worthless? Because you've treated me like I was something to be ashamed of? The wedding guests were riveted. I could see phones coming out, people recording this whole disaster. And honestly, I was glad. I wanted everyone to see. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice carrying across the entire crowd. First, I'm calling the IRS. Tomorrow morning. With all these documents, showing your tax evasion and bankruptcy fraud. Uncle Richard's head shot up. You can't. I can. And I will. I turned to address the entire wedding reception. Did everyone hear that? Richard Morrison, the host of this lovely party, is a tax cheat and a fraud. Just thought you should know before you do business with him. Aunt Margaret was crying now. Sarah, please. Please what? Please keep quiet? Please, let you get away with it? Please pretend that sitting me next to garbage was acceptable? I shook my head. No. I'm done being quiet. Jessica was standing there in her wedding dress, mascara running down her face, looking at her parents like she'd never seen them before. Sarah, she said quietly. I didn't know about any of this. I swear. I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said softly. And I'm sorry this happened at your wedding. But I'm not sorry, they're finally facing consequences. That's when my mother, my own mother, tried one last desperate play. Sarah, honey, she said, approaching me carefully. You're upset, I understand, but maybe we can work this out. As a family. Maybe we can make some changes. Changes? I pulled out my phone again. Like these text messages you sent to Aunt Margaret last month? I started reading, out loud. For everyone to hear. Text from Linda to Margaret, dated March 15th. I just don't know what to do about Sarah. She's so stubborn about accepting help. Maybe if we just stop inviting her to things, she'll get the message and focus on improving herself. My mother went white. Text from Margaret to Linda, same day. Agreed. Jessica's engagement party is going to be upper-class people only. Sarah would just bring down the whole atmosphere. Let's just not mention it to her. The crowd was dead silent. And my personal favorite, I continued, text from Linda to Margaret. At least when Sarah finally gives up on this teaching nonsense, maybe she'll find a real job. Or a husband with money. Then we won't have to pretend to care about her anymore. I looked at my mother. Stop pretending to care. Mother. We both know you gave up on me years ago. That's when the groom, poor guy, it was supposed to be his wedding day, stepped forward. Jessica, he said quietly. Do you want to go inside? We can salvage the reception. Jessica looked at him. Then at her parents. Then at the 200 guests, who were all staring at our family like we were a car accident they couldn't look away from. No, she said. No, I think this wedding is over. She started walking back toward the building. Then she stopped and turned around. Sarah, she called out. Would you like to come inside? There's an empty table at the front. Next to the family. I smiled. A real smile, for the first time all day. Thank you, Jessica. But I think Marcus and I are going to go home. We have wedding planning of our own to do. And we walked away. Left them standing there, in front of 200 witnesses, with their lies and their fraud and their complete humiliation, exposed for everyone to see. The call started the next morning. The first call came at 6 a.m. My mother, sobbing into the phone. Sarah, please, you have to call the IRS and tell them it was all a misunderstanding. I hung up. The second call was Uncle Richard. Sarah, we can work this out. We can give you money. We can help with your wedding. I hung up. The third call was from a lawyer. Apparently, the IRS works fast when you hand them a complete case file of tax fraud. They'd already frozen Uncle Richard's accounts, pending investigation. The lawyer wanted to know if I'd testify in court. I said yes. Over the next few weeks, the calls kept coming. Aunt Margaret begging me to reconsider. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly wanting to catch up and convince me to drop the charges. Even my own mother called every day for 2 weeks. But the call that meant the most came from Jessica. Sarah, she said, her voice small. I wanted you to know. I'm getting the marriage annulled. What? Why? Because I realized something. At my wedding, when I saw you sitting by that garbage, and I saw what my parents had become, I realized I don't know who I am anymore. I've been so focused on marrying into the right family, having the right wedding, that I forgot what actually matters. She paused. I'm moving out of my parents' house. I got a job, a real job. Not working for Dad's company, but something I actually earned myself. And I'm going back to school. To become a teacher. I smiled. I want to be like you, Sarah. I want to help people instead of just taking from them. 6 months later. Uncle Richard pled guilty to tax evasion and bankruptcy fraud. He's serving 18 months in federal prison, and he owes the government over $2 million in back taxes and penalties. Aunt Margaret had to sell the mansion. The cars. The jewelry. Everything. She's living in a 1-bedroom apartment now, and working at a department store. My mother cut off contact with me completely. She sent one final text that said, I hope you're happy. You destroyed this family. I wrote back. No. I exposed this family. There's a difference. But the best part, the absolutely best part, happened 3 weeks ago. Marcus and I got married. It was a small ceremony, just us, our friends, and Jessica, who walked me down the aisle, because she's the only family I need now. We spent $800 total. Jessica made my bouquet. My students from school sang during the ceremony. And we had the reception in the school gymnasium. It was perfect. No marble floors or crystal chandeliers. No $400,000 price tag. Just love. And laughter. And people who actually care about each other. The night of our wedding, I got a text from an unknown number. Sarah, this is Mrs. Henderson, your uncle's former neighbor. I saw the news about his conviction. I wanted to thank you for standing up to bullies. The lawsuit he filed against me nearly broke me. But seeing him in handcuffs on the news gave me hope that sometimes good people do win. She was right. Sometimes good people do win. Not because we're perfect, or because we have money, or because we wear the right clothes to the right events. But because we remember that kindness matters. That family should lift each other up, not tear each other down. And that, sometimes, the trash is exactly where some people belong. My family thought putting me by the garbage would teach me my place. Instead, it taught me theirs. And now, when I drive past that country club where Jessica's wedding fell apart, I smile. Because I know that, somewhere inside, there's probably another family member, sitting by the trash, waiting for their moment to take out the garbage. If you liked this story, check out this other one on the screen. About the mother-in-law who tried to ruin my wedding dress and ended up ruining her own life instead. See you there.